Well, let's get some analysis then on what is happening in Gaza and in the wider Middle East. I'm very pleased to be joined now by Eberhard Kienle. He's a researcher focused on the Middle East. He joins me live on the programme now. Good to have you, sir. First of all,
thank you.
Blinken in the region at a moment of huge uncertainty and real fear then that what we're seeing in Gaza could spread elsewhere. He's in the Gulf today. He'll be in Israel tonight. What do you think tangibly Blinken can do now to bring down the tensions?
I suppose what tangibly he could do would be to talk very seriously to the Israeli government to reduce its military action in Gaza and probably to come to agree to a ceasefire. The countries he is touring at the moment, except for Israel, have very, very little influence on events on the ground. So I suppose what he is doing in Qatar, what he is doing in the Emirates, what he's doing in Saudi Arabia is largely, in a sense, to, well, you may say, reassure, test critical allies of the United States and to see how far they are going to support the current US policy and Israeli policies. But none of these actors will be able to really resolve the conflict, except at the moment for Israel and Hamas.
And Blinken, of course, is going to Israel later on today. Do you think there'll be a different message from Blinken on this trip to Israel compared to previous trips he's made since the war began?
I'm not quite sure about that, really. Possibly, yes, because, events have accumulated and events are not going, say, the right way for the American administration. There are indeed, as he says, far too many civilian casualties. The war, Israeli sources tell us, including from the government, that it may continue for months and maybe for the rest of the year. So I suppose that's not in the interest of the American government. However, the question is to what extent he will be able to really weigh on the Israeli government, which has divided itself and where there are very strong forces which are not in any way ready to agree to a ceasefire.
And let's widen this out a little bit if we can. Let's talk about, what we're seeing beyond Gaza. There have been these sort of ongoing attacks on ships in the Red Sea. There was, of course, the Israeli killing of that top Hamas leader in Beirut, in the Lebanese capital. Just today, there's been more cross-border fire between Israel and Lebanon. Do you think now wider violence in the Middle East is inevitable?
No, it's not. It is by no means inevitable. It is possible. Now, we don't know what the future holds, but so far, I suppose that the armed exchanges across the Lebanese border, even within the West Bank, even the Houthi attacks, remain, I suppose, within the limits that are manageable by the Americans and by their allies. But this may derail at any moment, and of course it's useful, I suppose, to talk to everybody. The trouble is, as I said earlier, that the forces and the powers he's talking to are not necessarily able to rein in that violence, except, of course, once again, for the Israelis and Hamas.
Just finally, on one of those specifics then, perhaps we can talk a bit about the killing of Salah al-Aruri in Lebanon. Hezbollah has suggested it will respond. What kind of response do you think that will be?
Hezbollah has told the world that it will respond ever since the beginning of the current crisis and the current war. Now, responses may come in different ways, but I still think that there are enormous odds for Hezbollah to really take significant military action. Hezbollah would possibly lose far more than it would gain, and I think it is very dangerous to think of Hezbollah as just an instrument in the hands of Iran. Hezbollah is a Lebanese party which no doubt is supported by Iran, but which also has, and perhaps primarily, its primary aim is to be a major political actor in Lebanon. So if Israel attacks Hezbollah, Hezbollah may indeed, as the Israelis say, face a situation like Gaza today. Now, this might, of course, bring further violence and possibly lead to Iran entering the fray. But this is not necessarily the case. So I think Hezbollah would possibly lose far more, and they know it, than they would gain.
All right, well, we'll see what happens. I want to thank you for your time and for your analysis. Eberhard Kienle joining us there live on the programme.
Thank you very much.